Hi, everybody. Welcome back to PCS 101. This is for our class for Tuesday, the 29th, where we are getting ready to present our first speech. So you can see in the notes below that I have one chapter assigned for today because basically we've covered most of the major points in the textbook thus far. And the chapters that remain will be chapters that will be directed to our upcoming speeches. Today we also have our first quiz, which is open book, open notes, 20 questions, mostly true, false, and some short answers, and occasionally a multiple choice. And there are 4 quizzes throughout the course of the semester, and I dropped the lowest grade. And hopefully the questions on the quiz will reiterate some of the major points that we've been talking about that will be useful for you as you put together speech number 1, which is going to be due this Thursday on the 31st. And if you look at the notes below, and this is in the second section, you have been given instructions on how to upload your speech. And what I'm going to be doing in the next day or so is creating a Moodle folder in the upper portion of our Moodle section for speech number 1 so that you can upload your speech number 1 into that folder. It'll be an orange folder. It'll be in that general section. And I ask that you send a copy of your speaking outline because you do not want to deliver a speech without a speaking outline to my email, which is Ruiz, R-U-I-Z, at gcc.mass.edu. And send me the outline you actually use, not the outline you think I want to see, because what I want is for you to practice at writing speech outlines that are helpful. And when we talked about the idea of an outline, we talked about how less is more. What you're looking at the notes below is basically my outline, and you may not even need to reference your outline, but it's there in case of an emergency. Certainly creating the outline is going to help you in relation to thinking about how to organize and structure your speech. And if you deviate from your outline, your audience would never know. I liken it to following a map that you can decide not to follow those directions, but it comes with a certain amount of risk. And certainly you're not going to be penalized if you didn't follow your outline. The idea of an outline is that it is a resource for you to utilize when you are delivering the speech. But I would like to see the actual outline that you use to deliver the speech, because I want to get a sense as to how to offer suggestions so that when you are delivering speeches, you've got a good sense of how to put together a speaking outline. And the directions I have for the use of the technology come from our IT department. They suggested the best way to do this is to upload your speech video to YouTube, which is actually what I do when I record these videos. I record these videos on my cell and then I upload them to YouTube. And then for you, you would be embedding the link in the Moodle folder that I'm going to be posting or creating. And according to YouTube, or according to our IT department, it's best to verify your account on YouTube before uploading to prevent errors uploading longer videos. So you'll want to think about that as well in terms of due dates and what your speed is for your internet connection and how long it may or may not take you to upload a video. The directions is that you log on to studio.youtube.com. You click the blue upload button on the dashboard. You drop and drag the MP4 file or click the select files button to open a file picker window. On the details window, add a description as the video is being uploaded. When you click next, you will be prompted to identify if the video is intended for children. Most users skip adding any elements, and then on the visibility tab, set the visibility to unlisted and then click save. Now, those are IT directions. I can tell you that I do this all the time and it's pretty intuitive. I just follow the prompts, which is what I recommend you do. But certainly, if you're having difficulty, you can contact the GCC library because they've got staff that can help you with technological issues. You can also contact the GCC IT department. I might be able to help as well, so you can also reach out to me as well. So, the last chapter that I wanted to talk about today is about delivering your speech. And there are different kinds of speeches. We're focusing on the extemporaneous speech, which is prepared in advance and it's delivered with a speaking outline. It's usually considered to be the most effective kind of speech, but of course, it would depend on the situation. And the reason why it's so effective is because you can keep this level of conversationality with your audience, so it seems somewhat informal, and you can keep eye contact, whether it be to a camera or to your audience. And that's something that's highly valued in Western society. Now, the idea of the impromptu speech, which is what I call a rather dangerous speech, that it's a spur of the moment with no prior preparation. And usually it occurs because you didn't realize that you were going to have to give a speech. Perhaps being given an award ceremony. I suggest that you keep it simple and short because you haven't had the opportunity to prepare for it. Certainly, you don't want to deliver an impromptu speech for speech number one. So, thinking that, well, the first speech is about myself and I know this topic very well, so I'll just speak off the top of my head, is not the best way to proceed when we are talking about delivering a speech to an audience, or in this particular instance, recording a speech for an audience. The manuscript speech, which might seem to be appealing. You get to read from a manuscript or perhaps from a teleprompter. Now, I've never read from a teleprompter myself, but I know that it does require a certain level of skill so that it doesn't appear stilted and it doesn't appear as if you're reading. And even if you do have access to a teleprompter, things can still go wrong. So, in the notes below, under the first section there and under the section A about speeches, you will see a brief video about a teleprompter fail. Basically, you will see a very noted director who lost access to his teleprompter, panicked on stage, and basically ran off stage. So it's just a couple minutes long, but it goes to show that even individuals who are highly skilled and even individuals who know their subject matter well, if they rely too much on external sources, what oftentimes can happen is that they get nervous, they feel anxiety, and they panic. It wasn't that he didn't know the content, it's just that he was assuming he could just read the teleprompter and not have to put too much thought or effort into it. And he was wrong. There is the memorized speech, which again you might be tempted to do, and usually this only works for short and incredibly formal events where exact language is necessary. And that's not this kind of speech. I'm talking about something like a political speech where saying the wrong thing could result in war. I'm talking about a news broadcast where things are timed to the second. So, again, if you do give a memorized speech, you want to try to present it as if it isn't memorized. That's one of the difficulties with the memorized speech, is that it can come off as rather monotone, which gets us to the elements of delivering a speech. Voice. So certainly you want to be conversational, which means you want to vary your volume, you want to vary your speed, you want to vary your inflections, those areas of your speech that you stress, those words that you stress, to give them emphasis. You want to enunciate clearly, so you don't want to mumble. You want to pause for effect. When I think about some of the more subtler elements of vocal delivery, things like accents, for instance, that's something that you're not going to be able to change in a short period of time, nor should you try. The idea is that you are audible and intelligible enough for your audience to be able to understand what you're saying. So if you do have a heavy accent and you think that it might get in the way of your communicating with your audience, you can even begin by telling your audience that you have an accent. And if anybody has difficulty understanding you, please let you know that puts the burden of responsibility now on the audience to pay particularly close attention. Proxemics, the use of space. And this is a discipline in and of itself. It's about furniture arrangement. So think about your typical classroom, whether to put furniture in rows or to put them in circles. The idea of how far or how close you want to be to your audience, or in this instance, your camera. So we had talked about that you want to make sure that there's good visibility for particularly your face, because we read so many emotional cues off of people's faces. And that's called affect display, being able to read emotional responses. I'll never forget learning about a study about individuals who are having great difficulty with social relationships, so much so that they were having difficulty working and going to school. And they found that when they were shown pictures of individuals expressing particular emotions through their facial expressions, which tend to be fairly universal regardless of culture. So a smile usually means happiness, though of course you can have an ironic smile or a sad smile. A frown usually indicates unhappiness. What they were doing is they were misidentifying these facial cues. So they were identifying something like a frown as happiness and something like a smile as unhappiness. It would make a certain level of sense as to why they were having difficulty in social situations like work and school if they were completely misreading nonverbal cues. And so much of our interactions occur through our reading and understanding the meanings of nonverbal cues. So it isn't just what you say, it's how you say it. And gesturing, that in and of itself can be something that can make a difference in terms of how you communicate a message. There are conventional gestures that's the meaning is assigned by custom. Take something like a thumbs up or an okay sign. Though you need to be careful, those can sometimes be culturally based. The image of the okay sign, where you put your thumb and your pointer finger together to make a circle, and then you raise the following three fingers. In some cultures, that's considered to be offensive. So you need to be very careful. That's not our culture necessarily. So you need to be very careful as to how you are using your gestures. Remember, a colleague of mine went to Brazil actually, and he was very confused because it seemed that he was dealing with some rather distant and hesitant people there, and he had heard that the populace was quite different. And eventually, someone basically told him that he needed to stop offending everybody. And he asked, not understanding, how am I offending everybody? And what he was doing is he had been giving that gesture of the okay sign throughout his time in Brazil, which in Brazil is the equivalent of an insult, FU to be exact. So you can understand why he was getting the reception that he was getting. And again, it was not intended, and it was unknown to him, but it definitely led to greater miscommunication and difficulty with cultural connections. There are descriptive gestures, and usually those are easier to read because they indicate things like size or shape or location. For instance, when you're pointing in a particular direction. There are also indicators, things that can express feelings, such as slamming a fist on the desk to emphasize a point. And of course, eye contact, which we highly value in the West, in some cultures is considered to be not necessarily a sign of respect. So you need to be very careful in understanding who the demographic groups are in your audience. And you want to try to vary your eye contact when you're in a face-to-face situation. Usually you want to look at the two sides of the room as well as the middle of the room, which will give you a sense that you're scanning the room. You don't even necessarily have to look specifically at faces. You could perhaps look at the two corner points in the room and the midpoint in the room, which gives the visual illusion of looking at people, not necessarily looking at them per se, if that leads to a certain level of anxiety. But as you know, you're going to be speaking to a camera. So basically, the camera lens is your audience. So you want to be looking into the camera lens. And play back your video. You want to watch it and make sure that you're content with it, because all kinds of things can happen that you don't realize when you are recording a video. For instance, holding up a visual and then the video records it backwards. So now all of the wording is backwards. And you're not required to use a visual for your first speech. You will be for your second, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but you might elect to use some sort of audio visual. But certainly you want to review your speech before you upload it. And you want to make sure that it's uploaded correctly. So you just don't want to leave it. You want to access it and test it and make sure. So that speech number 1, that autobiographical speech about yourself, that is approximately 5 minutes long, is going to be due on Thursday, the 31st. And as I had indicated, if you thought you wanted to reach out to me to talk about that speech, please do so. And I'm going to leave the rest of the class time for you to basically work on your first quiz, which is going to be in lieu of the usual attendance question that you would do. So for that first quiz, you can see that this is section 4, the notes below. I'm asking that you return that via PDF. What I suggest you do is that you copy and paste the quiz into a word processing document and then turn it into a PDF and then send it to my email, which is how my grading program works best. Again, my email is ruiz, R-U-I-Z, @gcc.mass.edu. And that would be due by Thursday, the 31st, in lieu of your discussion form attendance response. So I hope you're doing well. I'm doing well. And next class, we will upload speech number 1. Take care. Bye-bye.